Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Chase Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back into another edition of Operation Domination. I'm back in the building. I'm tan, I'm roasted, I'm toasted. Let's get this thing going. It is week 8, gents. Week 8. We are just about almost, because now the 17 games now, almost halfway through the NFL season already as we get towards the end of October. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, joined here with Adam LaRue, Chase Thornton. Good job holding down the fort, fellas, last week for me. You looked awesome on there while I was sipping my Mai Tais on the beach. I was thinking about you.
We were drinking here too, so it's all good.
That's right, because we got the DFS cocktail hour like we always do tonight. Of course, some start-sit questions and some other wonderings from the fans on your fantasy football problems heading into Bymageddon. And of course, we have a dynasty temperature check to figure out where these players' values are falling in the middle of the season here too. And might be able to help you out for a redraft and who might potentially be time to sell high. Let's dive into it, shall we? 6 teams on bye. I'm going through my rankings and I'm looking at the quarterbacks and the running backs, the tight ends in particular. I mean, there's always a ton of wide receivers, so you don't notice it quite as much, but I'm getting to like quarterback 14 and I'm getting the running back like 24 and I'm getting the tight end like 12 and I'm like, woof. Like the names that are in those pockets, those areas which you're going to have to start and stream are not the typical names that you're looking to see. So hopefully we'll be able to help you guys out here a bit. All right, let's dive into the first question of the day. And I love this question. Joe Flacco or Jackson Dart in week 8? That's where we are in week 8 right now. Joe Flacco making a resurgence. He just has to keep popping to each team until he finds the magic again. That's just kind of how it has to work. Like, oh, if he's not going here, then just send him to another team, see if he gets hot there. If he's not getting going there, just send him to another team. And eventually, he's just going to start popping off like we saw a couple of years ago Joe Flacco do. And Chase, let's go to you first on this one. Which one are you going to play this week?
Yeah, despite the fact that Joe is maybe thrown to the most talented overall group of skilled position players he's had yet, and despite the fact, he's still in his usual 4-week honeymoon with a new team, I'm going to go with Jackson. I'm going to go with Jackson Dart this week. I'm going with Jackson Dart over Flacco. He's the QB 13 on the week. He's averaged, like, don't look at his overall stats and think that tells the whole story, because he really didn't even play those first 2 weeks. In the weeks that he's been a starter, he has averaged 21.84 points a game as the starter. That would be quarterback 4 if he had done that over the full season so far. Jackson Dart's been really, really good fantasy-wise there. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns in 4 games as a starter. He's got 7 passing touchdowns as well. Keep in mind that, Danger Russ, who had a great moment on Twitter this week, by the way, though, responding to Sean Payton's diss, He had 3 touchdowns passing in his games as a starter, and they all came in the same dang game against Dallas, who gives up points to everybody. Philadelphia gives up only the 17th most points to quarterbacks, but Dart was the quarterback 3 overall versus them just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going with Jackson Dart in this one. I like me some Joe Flacco, but teams have some tape on him in Cincinnati now. The no interceptions that he has not thrown in the last 2 weeks, that's not going to last forever. Just look what he did the first few weeks in Cleveland, pardon me. The Jets are overdue for their first interception. I think that comes this week against Flacco. Give me Dart.
Okay. Adam, do you disagree with that at all?
Nope, not at all. I think it's a really interesting question, and that it's 2 quarterbacks who I think are on runs that I don't find to be sustainable at all. And not to take away, I have been impressed by Dart, but getting 30 points and also completing less than half your passes
that's tough.
My quarterback's done it. I'll say it, but not something that I think you can make a living doing. Now, granted, his completion percentage has been better than that largely, but in those other games, the yards per attempt has not been good. So point being, I don't know that it's sustainable, but for right now, I'm riding it. He has the rushing upside, which Flacco doesn't. And on his end, to your point, the interceptions, not throwing them is probably not sustainable. And at some point, a pass rush is going to come out of somewhere, and it's going to be a problem for Joe Flacco. Having said that, I don't think that's going to be the Jets because their pass rush has been abysmal so far.
Yeah, I hear you on this one. So, I mean, Flacco's a fine stream. I got him as my quarterback 14. So if you're in a situation where you need to stream him, it's fine against the Jets.
I'm starting him in some super flexes.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time in super flexes. Hell yeah.
100%. I mean, look, he even said it. Like, I don't know what all the plays are, but I know at the end of the day, if I throw the Jamar Chase, I'll be fine. So, that's a good way to put up fantasy points. So
when you're throwing the ball up in the air for Jamar and T. Higgins, so yeah, hell yeah, do it.
And this is the part of the season where I start looking at the last 4 weeks. I kind of let the first couple of weeks of the season kind of fall off. Teams are not what they were the first couple of weeks of the season. We start to see that trend towards, the middle part now that we're in. And Jackson Dart, since week 4, he's been the quarterback for. Like, he's been on an absolute tear, mostly again because of his rushing. There's, that's where most of it's coming from. Like, he's only completing 60% of his passes. Like, we get it. We get where the rushing is coming from, what that's supplying for the fantasy points. And the Eagles are a good matchup for this because they're only middle of the pack as far as overall points given up to the quarterbacks, but they're 5th in most rushing yardage given up to quarterbacks so far this season. He finished as the quarterback 3 overall 2 weeks ago when he just played the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, no 2 games are ever the same within division, but with the way he's playing right now, being aggressive down the field and consistently rushing, I think he has 24% of the team's rushing attempts over the last 4 weeks as well. It establishes a floor for fantasy football purposes, even if the Eagles do play it better. Remember, in that game, they didn't have Jaylen Carter for that week, but even last week when they did have him, like, the Eagles defense is not what it was a season ago. So I'm not ultimately too worried about this. He is my quarterback 8 on the week. Let's go to the next question there, since we all pretty much consensus on Jackson Dart. This person needed 2 people from this group of 3 in a PPR league, and that's Jacory, Croswell-Merritt, and guess what? You've lost the privilege for us to call you Bill because you stink. Jordan Mason and Kamani Vidal are the other 2 that he is choosing from. Adam, which way are you leaning here?
Yeah, I mean, Mason's the clear and obvious one to me. I think he's like a tier above the rest of these guys, in my opinion. I'm going Vidal, mainly because you mentioned that it is a PPR league that you're asking this question for, and he's the one getting the targets here. Is still doing good in the snap count. The run game did not go well for the Chargers at all this past week, but I expect that to be a little bit better upcoming. But nonetheless, I think the real edge is the 5 targets at 4 targets, I believe, the week before versus Croswell-Merritt, I think, peaking at 2 targets and normally averaging closer to 1. So for me, especially in PPR, I'm going Vidal.
Anything different there, Chase?
No, I'm going with Mason and Vidal as well. It's a Thursday night running back bonanza. You're either going to head into Sunday feeling really good about yourself or praying for some points out of your wide receiver, position there. But I agree that Mason is the smash start here. Los Angeles is giving up the 9th most running back points to their opponents here. And Vidal, I mean, Minnesota's a little bit better against running backs, but Vidal had a career high 5 targets last week. Haskins is banged up. It's going to be the Kamani show in that backfield. There's nobody else really to be had. And yeah, Billiam, Croswell-Merritt, our friend here in Washington. I mean, he's had 16 opportunities per game the last 3 weeks, but he hasn't done much outside of, guess what? The game against the Chargers, who Mason is playing. So yeah, give me Mason and Vidal head up against each other, and we'll sit Bill this week.
Ultimately, he's a back that doesn't catch the ball in a game where they are plus 12. Like, what are you going to do with that?
What are you going to do with that?
Yeah, because if it's Mariota leading that team, there's some talk that maybe Terry McLaurin comes back this week, but the Commanders might just not have much against the Kansas City Chiefs, whose defense is playing well right now. So yeah, all the reasons why. And if you couldn't tell by my comment earlier on JCM, of course, I'm not in on him. I think the only reason the Jordan Mason question even came up was because Aaron Jones expected to be activated for this game. Maybe. We'll see what happens. Even if he is, he's coming back on a week where they're playing a Thursday game. He had a limited practice on Tuesday when they had a walkthrough. He's had no time to really get back into it coming off of a hamstring injury. At worst case scenario, Aaron Jones would take over the passing down role. I really don't think Jordan Mason would lose much. And you're going against the Chargers team giving up the ninth most rushing yards or ninth most fantasy points to running backs, mostly due to the ground because that defense is just not playing well right now.
They did not overwork Jordan Mason on Sunday. I know it's always weird playing a running back on Thursday after a Sunday game kind of thing, but they didn't overwork Jordan Mason on Sunday. He's got plenty of juice left for Thursday regardless. So yeah, I think they're in on it.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so we're all consensus there. Let's see if we keep agreeing. So now we have start Mooney, Jaylen, Waddle, or Rashad White in week 8. Chase, how are you seeing this one?
I still say it's White, and I don't think, honestly, it's very close among these three guys. For me, it's not. I think White is still going to be the man. I even if Bucky Irving plays, I don't think they play him or push him too hard. Remember, they've got to bye the following week, so they can give him even that much more rest to get back, and they will need Bucky Irving going forward, especially with that banged-up receiver core they've got there. They're going to lean on that running back. New Orleans gives up the 11th most points to running backs. Mooney, Miami is a lot tougher against wide receivers than they are against anything else. I don't think Atlanta's going to have to throw. So even though Mooney's he's okay, and he's a very good wide receiver too on that team, I don't think Atlanta's going to have to throw much. So I don't want to have to rely on him. And then Waddle, Miami's just been a mess. You never know who they're going to rely on. And even if they rely on him, you can't rely on him. Atlanta's a tough defense to wide receivers, whether their pass rushers are healthy or not, to be honest with you. So I'm not worried about this. It's Rashad White for me all day.
Okay. I tend to agree. Adam, do you see it any differently?
The only thing I'd say, I think I'm a lot closer between White and Waddle than you are, but I do still lean White between the two, just based on the game script. For me, I'm not knocking. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, to me, Mooney is like, he's getting the Alec Pierce cardio treatment. He's like on
100%
wide receiver 60. Like, I don't care. The one thing I'll throw out there is Tua sucks. I'm not gonna like sugarcoat that, but like, I'm not also not going to knock this offense and knock Waddle's abilities in particular based on like even in a good Tua season, you're playing a top 5 defense. It's raining, you're outside, and there's 20-mile-per-hour winds. Like when Tua was good, that game was going to go horrifically. So like I'm not knocking it too hard. I still think that Waddle is closer to his 2 previous games where he was a 9-target guy than he was last week. I think that's like Tua will always be bad outside, on the road, in the rain, in the wind. Like that's always going to go horrifically for Tua. So I'm not knocking it too hard.
And he's not even alone in that.
Yeah. No. And then this week he's in a dome against Atlanta on a fast track. I'm with you. I mean, ideally you find a way to start both Waddle and Rashad White, especially in a heavy bye week like this. To me, Rashad White, though, with Bucky Irving already ruled out, he's not only just a must play, he's in my top 8 going into this week. Is Sean Tucker's not a thing. All right. White's had 84% of the snaps since week 5. There's no debate here. The Saints are allowing the 10th most fantasy points to running backs. They've become a complete funnel to the running backs over the past 4 weeks. That's how teams are choosing to attack them, because their offense can't stay on the field. So once the running game for the other team gets going, it's a murderer's row. And with Godwin now out and Mike Evans out, it's a Emeka Egbuka who's not 100% at the moment, and Rashad White, who's going to get his fair share of catches, and in a game in which he could actually be a little bit more efficient than what we're used to seeing him be on the ground because of the matchup that he has. So yeah, must play there. All right, this is where I think it gets a little more interesting. We got a defensive question. I love getting these defensive questions on here. The Falcons, the Bills, or the Chargers are this person's favorite defensive streamers for week 8. But they would love to hear which one you guys would like, or if you have any other pivot options. Adam, let's go to you first.
Yeah, one that was not mentioned that I think is pretty decent is Chicago. This is especially, of course, if Lamar does not play. Really only if Lamar doesn't play. That defense against Cooper Rush, they're getting pushed down in the overall season rankings. I think they're defense 12 right now, and they're widely available, at least in my experience. I checked the leagues, that I'm in, and I was largely able to find them available if I didn't have them. But the reality is, outside of the -7 against Detroit, which, look, getting 50 dropped on you by Detroit is kind of an experience that most teams have had to deal with over the last couple of years at some point or another. Outside of that, they've been a 10 points a week defense, which is pretty solid. They may not have the upside that you would hope for, but I mean, realistically, they've gotten a turnover in every game. They've had multiple sacks in every game except for Detroit and one. They've had a couple 3 turnover games. Like I think they're a pretty solid option.
That's a nice outside the box one, because most people are not going to look that way. Now, here's my question. What if it's Tyler Huntley?
I'm still that does not change much for me. Lamar changes a lot for me. Snoop Huntley versus Pro Bowler, puts respect on his name, Pro Bowler.
Yeah, exactly.
But no,
ridiculous that is, by the way, that we actually have to say Tyler Huntley legitimately was a Pro Bowler, because there's like 9 alternatives that turned it down going to that game.
37 dudes quit. They were like, we got to have somebody to sell jerseys for.
I just had to bring that up because I mean, actually, it is a possibility. It sounds like to me Cooper Rush and Tyler Huntley are splitting reps in the situation that Lamar Jackson cannot go in this game. So it's actually a possibility that maybe Tyler Huntley, not Cooper Rush. We'll keep our eye on that. Chase, what are you seeing for this defensive question?
Honestly, Tampa Bay is not a terrible play, I don't think, this week. They're not a terrible defense. They're playing the New Orleans Saints, who have been, I think, better than I think some people have expected, but they still give up the 11th most points to opposing defenses there. And it might be the last time you can use the Buccaneers for a while. I think they've got the Patriots coming up. They've got the Bills after that. So you may not want to be using Tampa Bay for a while. They're not a bad play this week, but I like Atlanta too, out of these guys here. I like that matchup with Miami, because Miami is Miami this year. And like I said, they're a mess. The Chargers do get Khalil Mack and Denzel Perryman back. Remember, they activated both of those guys off, and so that might help them a little bit against the run. But I'm still confident. Our previous question against about Jordan Mason versus them. So of the 3 here, I like the Falcons the best. But Tampa Bay, I don't think is a terrible play if you want to look outside those 3 teams for a streamer.
Yeah, I mean, you and I had the same pivot play as far as Tampa Bay goes. They blitz a lot. They're going to get turnovers, especially against the Spencer Rattler team and the Saints that can go the extra mile after we saw what the Bears just did to them a week ago. So that would be a pivot option for me. And they're coming off of performances the last couple of weeks with 11 and 8 points. Believe it or not. So Tampa Bay is the sneaky little play there. If you have to choose between those 3, I'm with you. It's the Falcons. The one thing I'd add in as a caveat is that you do need to pay attention to the health of the Falcons right now, because besides Diablo likely being out in this game, and that's a big loss, and Jalen Walker is still banged up. He didn't get to play last week. Billy Bowman is banged up. He didn't get to play last week. So there's certain elements to that defense that is not intact at the moment. Now, what you're hoping for and what's completely possible is, to Adam's point earlier, Tua completely blows this season, and the Miami team is about to just completely implode on itself as a whole. So you might just take advantage of it from that standpoint with Jeff Ulbrich calling plays. As well, I don't mind him as a play. The Bills defense, they stink, and Andy Dalton is an improvement over Bryce Young. And so they're actually playing a Carolina Panthers offense that I think is better than what we have seen over the past couple of weeks. I'm twisting the knife on Chase right now.
Yeah, we'll let that ride for another time. We'll let that ride for
So I wouldn't go with the Bills, even though it looks like a nice matchup against Carolina. Carson Wentz is good for some turnovers with the Chargers, but because they can't run the ball in their own right, they can't keep their offense on the field. Their defense is on the field all the time. And I just think it's too much of an option where Minnesota could put up a decent amount of points and Chargers not get enough turnovers, because they haven't been getting a ton of turnovers so far this season. All right, so let's go to the next question. Tight end question. I was waiting for one of these. So we got Harold Fannin against New England. We got Cade Otton against the Saints, and we got Mason Taylor against the Cincinnati Bengals. Which of these 3 do you favor this week, Chase?
I know I jumped on Cade Otton last week, and I did like him, and he did lead them in targets and receiving last week. He had a good game, but I think this is Fannin. I think it's Fannin regardless, but especially if there's no David Njoku this week. I mean, Harold Fannin has just been so awesome there. But Mason Taylor has a pretty cake matchup here against Cincinnati. Cincinnati gives up the most points to opposing tight ends. And this is a game that I think, since the advent of the Joe Flacco era in Cincinnati, I think that they're going to have to throw in this game to keep up, because I think Cincinnati suddenly rediscovered the idea that they can score points on offense as well. So, I like Taylor, but I think this is Fannin regardless. He's just been too good this season. He's about the best option they have in that pass game, especially since Jerry Jeudy decided to Jerry Jeudy after all and not do whatever the hell it was he did last year that shocked everybody and tricked everybody for draft season this year. So it's Fannin. Okay,
Adam.
I've got a very strange order of operations, which boils down to keep an eye out through the weekend. If Njoku doesn't play, we can stop it. I'm just going to go with Fannin. If Njoku plays, and if Tyrod Taylor ends up starting for the Jets, then I'm going to go with Mason Taylor. But he is both questionable and not officially named the starter yet, so that's hard to say.
True Tyrod. Let me stop you right there. That's true Tyrod Taylor fashion. The moment he's about to be a starter going into the week, I got a boo-boo. Whoopsie daisies.
The dude has lived through a punctured lung in pregame before. Like, we got to give him a break. It's not his fault.
He's trying his best. But anyway,
he's lucky to be alive.
But here's what I will say. If there's any chance Tyrod Taylor can suit up, he will after Woody Johnson just put Justin Fields on freaking blast. I was like, oh my. I was like, you are still paying this guy his checks, right? Like, geez Louise.
I wrote about that this week. Woody Johnson needs to shut up because obviously that he has not done very well running that team. So let somebody else make the decisions. I don't know if it's Aaron Glenn that needs to be making the decisions, but let somebody else make the decision, Woody.
Anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if nothing works out, then I'm happy to start K. Dotton. I think he'll get you your 8 targets. I think he'll get you in the ballpark of 10 points. I think he is a solid floor option. So if it's Justin Fields and you've got Njoku, then if all else fails, K. Dotton's a fine option. But, Fannin probably got the most upside, especially if Njoku's not there. Mason Taylor with Tyrod Taylor could get fed the ball as the de facto wide receiver 1. And if all else fails, K. Dotton's got the volume.
Honestly, all three of these guys might have relevance going forward, even not in bye weeks. Like, I like these 3 guys.
Well, so Mason Taylor was someone I was really hopping on a couple weeks ago because everything was looking like it was suiting up for him to go in that direction. I didn't expect Justin Fields to become so bad that he couldn't even throw for 50 yards.
Yeah. At the time we were jumping on Mason Taylor, he was throwing 200 yards per game. And since then, he's thrown 200 yards.
Yes, exactly. So it's wasn't quite ready for that. So with Tyrod Taylor, it does give you maybe some hope. Like, look, Taylor will throw the ball, especially short to Mason Taylor, especially if Garrett Wilson's out. By the way, we're mentioning all these injuries. I think it's a good time to plug. Make sure you come back tomorrow when I got Dr. Brian Scott on, because it's going to be a big episode. Even though 16's on bye, my list is still like 30 players long that we're going to have to talk about tomorrow night. So make sure you guys tune in and check back on your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel on the Fantasy Football Advice Network to get Operation Domination content. Okay, so let me dive into this real quick. If Njoku's out, and by the way, Njoku actually did put in a limited participant in practice today, so we'll have to see exactly how that works out. But if he's out, Fannin's in my top 6. Like, get past the fact that it was a bad weather game last week that didn't lead to much production. He had 87% of the routes and 28% of the target share going up against the Patriots, who've allowed the 13th most fantasy points to the tight ends. He's the number 1 target on that team. Yes. And while it could be Njoku-like in the sense of, could it be 12 targets for 60 yards? Sure, but it also likely leads to a touchdown with a safe floor to go along with it. Absolutely 100% behind it. And I'm with you guys on the Mason Taylor thing. He does crack my top 13 this week, so he's at the top edge of streaming options. K. Dotton's tough for me because I kind of laid it out earlier. The Saints have become this run funnel. And if they can get away with just throwing the ball to Emeka Egbuka and running the ball with Rashad White, I think Tampa Bay will. So it's not that it's a bad matchup. It's not that K. Dotton's not in for or more of a target share and can be a streaming option. There's just a much wider variance compared to those other 2, I believe, right now with the circumstances that are surrounding it. But of course, Njoku plays, then we're down the Mason Taylor.
Well, and don't forget, Otten he's competing with MVP candidate Tez Johnson as well, who has emerged in that wide receiver core as a force to be reckoned with.
And I was like, yes, my 127-pound receiver is getting an opportunity.
Damn right.
Check that out in your betting. Yeah, on your betting props, kids. Yeah.
Talking about Adam and Dynasty, we got a temperature check for you guys.
Hot air. So hot in here.
Well, we could start off with a skinny receiver, too. Not quite as skinny. That. But
that's tough to do. Outside of Troy
very
Franklin.
tough to do. But definitely one of them. Terry McLaurin, who, as we mentioned earlier, might be coming back this week. is someone who I find really interesting because he had his best year fantasy-wise last season. Has been a guy who, has been a really solid NFL receiver, but not quite fantasy until last season. Finally, kind of realized some of that potential. And then, of course, delays, getting to practice because of the contract situation, finally comes back, and then he gets hurt, and then we've been kind of in and out with him so far this season. At any rate, he's had 5 points per game and half-point PPR thus far this season. That is 60th. He is tied with a guy that we'll talk about later. He's the 23rd most traded wide receiver over the last week here, 43rd most traded overall player. I'm going to name you guys some example trades I've seen with Mr. Terry McLaurin, and I'm curious what you guys have to make of it, because he's an older receiver, has had the injuries, had not necessarily the greatest season so far, but not far off from being a fringe wide receiver 1 type of guy. So for him, we have a 2026 second and a 2026 third. We have adding Rashad Smith on top of Terry McLaurin, so that duo for Kenneth Walker. We have Terry McLaurin for Christian Watson and Jake Ferguson. And we have Khalil Shakir and a 2026 second for your Terry McLaurin. So guys, if you have Terry McLaurin, is he someone that you're panicking on? Especially Jaden's also been dealing with injuries in the same offense. If you're a contender, are you panicking on him? Or is he a buy candidate for you? Like what based on these values, what are you guys thinking when it comes to him?
Sell. Yeah, I'm not in on this. So first of all, here's what I want to say. And I know this is dynasty, so unless you just start up, Terry McLaurin would have already been on your team anyway. But for redraft, do not draft wide receivers that hold out late in the training camp. We have a trend on this now where guys just get injured every time that seems to happen because they haven't been working out most of the offseason. But besides all that, he's 30 years old on a team that I don't think is getting much better. Jaden Daniels, just like I thought he might when he got drafted, is turning into RG3. I don't care if they don't want to hear the comparison. The facts are the facts. He's going to be injury prone because he's skinny and doesn't know how to slide. That was always going to be an issue with Jaden Daniels. I don't know if that's something that typically goes away over time when he's still lenient on his rushing stats. And besides the fact, even when Jaden Daniels is out there, he's only averaging between 205 and 215 yards passing. There's not a lot of production. Now, when Terry McLaurin gets out there, he might get some of the target isolation around him. And Debo, of course, is already banged up in his own right. So maybe we get a scenario here where Debo's not on the field at the same time. But my point so more being is that Terry McLaurin coming into the season was already one of my busts of the year. And the reason why he was because there was no way in hell he was going to have the same touchdown production based on the amount of targets that he had and based on the usage that he had a season ago. And that's when he was getting all of the volume work. Now he's in a position where that may not even be the case. So he's 30 years old on a team that I think gets worse over time, not because of Daniels, because I've told everybody Cliff Kingsbury doesn't age well with time. Never has, never will. Don't know why we keep forgetting this fact. Dan Quinn's the same thing as a head coach. He doesn't age well with time. Never does, never will. So all those things to me are trending down. And I don't think this is an overreaction to the current time that we find ourselves with the Commanders who are underachieving. I think this is something that projection-wise, with him being 30 and the trend of this team and how this coaching staff works, I kind of want out on Terry McLaurin. Now, none of these trade offers in particular blow me away, but I would take Kenneth Walker in any trade that I could for Terry McLaurin in a heartbeat. Because with Walker, while it's been disappointing this season, he's not going to be on Seattle next season. There's a very real chance he gets an opportunity to be the guy somewhere else. So I would jump on a deal like that. It helps you now, and it helps you in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I have to agree with you that, like, if you can get younger, like the Khalil Shakir in the 2026 second, I would jump on that for Terry McLaurin. I love Scary Terry's like skill set when he's happy and when he's healthy and he's on the field and his quarterback is healthy. I mean, he's got the goods. Unfortunately, literally none of those have been true so far this season. Like you said, the touchdown regression was always coming for this season. And he is 30 years old. I mean, I hate to do it, but yeah, if you can get younger, if you can get Christian Watson, who is injury prone, but you're also getting Ferguson back. If you can get Khalil Shakir younger at the position, plus the 2026 too. Yeah. If you can get Kenneth Walker, who I agree with you is going to blow up somewhere else next year. yeah, get out from underneath Scary Terry. Unfortunately, it sucks, but it is what it is.
All right, so we're selling Scary Terry, huh?
Where do you fall on it?
Yeah,
I tend to agree, especially, I've always liked Khalil Shakir, so I think getting him in a second is nice. I mean, he's been the better asset this season so far, at the very least. Even the games where Terry McLaurin's played. I like the Kenneth Walker trade a good deal as well. Getting a starting tight end, a high-end starting tight end so far this season is nice on the Ferguson deal. And, I mean, realistically, a 2026 second and a third, depending on where that draft slot is could be up to like a fringe first in value to me. Maybe a little bit less, but nonetheless, I'd take that for Terry, I think, at this point.
it sucks because I feel like you're late on the window for McLaurin, though. I feel you're getting
this offseason was the best
compared. Yeah, no, exactly. Before this season started, in fact, even before the holdout BS was going on, would have been the ideal time. Coming off the giant season last year, you're not getting as much as you could have for him, but if you can get some of the things that we've had laid out in front of us, do it.
All right. On to another receiver that I'm curious your guys' thoughts on. These are all receivers today, by the way. I thought they were all interesting names, and that's just the way we're going. Wanyél Robinson, the de facto wide receiver 1 for the New York Giants, is at 8.1 points per game, although that is up, as we all know, since Malik Neighbors' injury. That is the 30th wide receiver in half-point PPR. He is also the 16th most traded wide receiver and 30th most traded player overall. Some example trades for Wanyél Robinson, which I think are super fascinating. I think in terms of value, I think he's the one that was most surprising to me. Straight up for a 2026 second, Trey Harris and a 2026 fourth, plus a second for DeAndre Swift, and then Rashid Shaheed and a 2027 second. So guys, what are you doing with Wanyél Robinson? I mean, he's someone who was fairly cheap at a couple points in his career, that you may have gotten a good deal on bringing him in, and now could be a selling opportunity. Or do you think that with Neighbors' injury, this is something, at least for this season, you're holding on to, if not the start of next?
Well, this is funny to me because this is actually kind of near and dear. So I have a dynasty league where I'm rebuilding, and I've been stuck with Wanyél Robinson for forever. And it's weird because I keep having to play him because he keeps getting all this volume between last year and now this year, with Malik Neighbors out. He's kind of been a little bit of a useful player. The idea that I could trade him right now for Trey Harris and a pick, or even, DeAndre Swift and a pick if I was competing a little bit more, I'd hop all over that. If you're in a rebuild, I'm looking at Trey Harris and a pick really hard. Quentin Johnston's not going to come back to the Chargers. Trey Harris is going to take over that role. Keenan Allen, maybe he plays one more year. Maybe he up and retires. Basically, what I'm saying is in the next year or two at the most, this is going to be a Trey Harrison, Ladd McConkey team with Justin Herbert. I'm making that deal in a heartbeat. Now, if I'm competing now, you're probably not trading Wanyél Robinson unless it is for DeAndre Swift in a deal like that, in which case I'd still be okay with it. So like Swift is actually getting better now that he's losing touches to Monangai because he's back to being efficient again, which is just how he's always been more productive to begin with. So I'm not even worried about the idea that Swift's losing touches here. So yeah, I'm moving off of Wanyél Robinson with packages like this available without a freaking doubt.
Chase, you on the same page?
Yeah, no, I would do that too. I've never been a giant Wanyél Robinson fan. I think that he's nothing special as an NFL receiver. I don't think he's anything special as a fantasy receiver. And the deals that are laid out here, most of them I would jump all over. I know that the 2027 second is a year out, but trading Wanyél Robinson for Rashid Shaheed is a pretty lateral move. Plus, you're gaining a second round pick. I don't care what year it is. I would do that. I tend to agree with you there, Dan. If I can get Trey Harris and anything else for him, I would jump on that. The 2026 2 is pretty straight up, no matter where in the round I think that pick falls. And getting DeAndre Swift with what we know DeAndre Swift can do in that offense, you're giving up a 2026 second. But if you're making this trade, you're a contender anyway, and DeAndre Swift is going to give you more as a contender this season than Wanyél Robinson is. I'm all over all of these deals here because Wanyél Robinson, he's got a great situation this season, but that ain't going to last forever. And he's just nothing special. So do it.
One thing I want to say,
Good.
Does his situation last the full season in the sense that the Giants are starting to get feisty? I obviously they just gave up that bad loss this past week. Would they not consider getting their young quarterback a receiver?
I don't think the Giants are going to be buyers. Now, look, I'll put it this way. Had they won that game against the Broncos like they should have held on, I think there's a decent chance they could have been buyers going into the trade deadline. Maybe if they pull up another upset against the Eagles, I don't see them doing it twice. So if they wind up losing against the Eagles like they probably should, they're not going to be buyers at the deadline. I do think this is sustainable for Wanyél Robinson for the rest of the season. Here's the other thing that's going on with Wanyél. It's not Wanyél with Daniel Jones of years past where he's catching it 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. He's catching it down the field with volume on top of it. It's a nice blend going on right now that usually makes a wide receiver be a high wide receiver 3 minimum and sustainable throughout the rest of the season too, on top of it. So I think it's actually a decent chance here. What we're getting out of Wanyél Robinson over recent weeks is what he can consistently be throughout the rest of the season. So I did want to throw that out there.
He does have the best per pass, per target numbers of his career by far right now in terms of yardage. Yeah. You're right. He's getting the ball farther downfield, which is nice because it lets him do what he can do in the open field. So.
Yeah, absolutely. On to our last guy, and this is a bit of an emotionally charged one. Our third receiver, and the guy who I kind of led up with was tied with Terry McLaurin. That is Mike Evans. Now, I just want to throw an asterisk out here. For my other two guys, I did trades over the last week, as in last 7 days. For Mike Evans, obviously, I restricted it to trades over the last literally 48 hours. So we don't have a massive sample here, but obviously the situation around Mike Evans is very time sensitive here. The trades before that would be much different. So just want to throw that out there that these are genuinely trades since his injury. Now that we've gotten past that, Mike Evans, again, 5 points per game and half-point PPR, 60th, tied with Terry McLaurin. He's the 14th most traded player, and he's actually right there with Wanyél Robinson pretty much at the 32nd overall traded player. So some example trades for Mike Evans. I think this is super interesting because remember, this is a collarbone, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
Upper body injury. This isn't, we always get worried with taller wide receivers, especially once you start getting those lower leg injuries, the hamstrings, things of that nature. All right, like, is this towards the end? This is a collarbone we're talking about. So some of the deals for Mike Evans. Isaiah Bond and a 2027 third. Tank Dell, straight up. This one upcoming 2026 second. That is the most common one that I've seen, to be fair. And then Rico Dowdle, who we talked about last week, and a 2026 third. So tell me, gentlemen, if you were a contender, you're freaking out because you just lost a guy you were depending on to start for you. What are you doing with Mike Evans? Are these deals compelling? And then on the opposite side, if you're a rebuild, Dan, you just talked about a rebuild that you're in. If you're seeing these prices, are you potentially interested in having Mike Evans around for next season?
I'm not interested in Mike Evans for next year. I'm not. So he's 32 years old, and you're talking about the current injury he's knocked out of the season for. Yes, it is a collarbone, fresh off of a hamstring injury. I was already kind of worried about Mike Evans entering this season, already kind of worried about this being the downturn of his career. He's a big, tall, excellent wide receiver. Doesn't mean he gets a shot somewhere else. Because they paid Chris Godwin because they're not probably keeping Mike Evans past this year anyway. So does he wind up somewhere else? Does he wind up in a role where he could be a touchdown guy? Sure, he could absolutely. But I think the days of him getting, a target share in the 24 to 26% and actually being a wide receiver one are long gone and well behind him. And he could just age out and not really do much of anything. He could become Alan Lazard pretty soon. Like, that is in the range of outcomes for him, unfortunately. Like, so when you're talking about that and 32 years old, if I'm in a rebuild, I'm definitely taking that second rounder. If I could take a second rounder for him next year, sure, 100%. Now, if you're in a rebuild, you probably don't have Mike Evans. This is a more interesting question, I think, from the standpoint of, are you a competitor? The only thing that helps you as a competitor is the Rico Dowdle and the third round pick deal. And I'm only doing that if I really need running back depth. Maybe you do. And I do think Dowdle is at the very least in a 50-50 split, if not, the 1A to Chuba Hubbard being the 1B the rest of the season. I think that's legitimate. And I probably would make that deal if I was a competitor too. Because again, I'm just not interested in Mike Evans being on my team again next season.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, Mike Evans is a guy that, I mean, if you were expecting to contend coming into this season and you were expecting Mike Evans to give you what you thought Mike Evans gives you every year, yeah, you might have him on your team. But I mean, Tank Dell, we don't know if Tank Dell ever plays again. So I don't know if you're making a trade for him with even trying to get out from underneath an aging Mike Evans. Isaiah Bond, I like Isaiah Bond's skill set. He's shown some flashes so far, but he's also on the Cleveland Browns, and that has to mitigate any kind of value anybody has in their career. I agree with you that the Rico Dowdle trade is probably the most it's the most appealing, not only if you're a contender, but I mean, Rico's only on that 1-year contract in Carolina. He's not necessarily guaranteed to be there. He might be a guy that, like we were kind of saying earlier, with guys who might be going somewhere else, like Kenneth Walker might end up somewhere else and might have a shot to start. Yeah, Dowdle might be playing himself into that kind of a opportunity this season because he's only on the 1-year deal there. So yeah, you want to get out from underneath Mike Evans. It sucks because I love Mike Evans. He's been one of my favorite fantasy guys for most of the last decade. But you got to take any realistic deal that you can get for him right now because time may not be kind. The cliff may be coming really, really quick, regardless of the injury. So get out of it.
Yeah, unfortunate for a long time debated Hall of Fame candidate. Unfortunate end potentially, at least to his Tampa Bay career.
Yeah, it was so close to the record for 1,000 yards every season too. So close. So yeah, big shout out to Mike Evans. It's a real shame to see it, but this is kind of where we're at this point. Where we're also at, because we need a drink on the Mike Evans front, is a DFS cocktail hour.
Yeah, we do. We gotta drink something here. It's Bymageddon, like we said. Hey, 6 teams on the bye, including some of the more intriguing offenses so far. Weirdly enough, in the NFL, Detroit's on bye this week. The Raiders are on bye. The Rams, the Cardinals, the Seahawks. Sam Darnold, like the career rejuvenation did not end when he left Minnesota. Sam Darnold is on bye this week, and the Seahawks offense and Jacksonville's on bye as well this week. So we got 6 teams. You're scrambling. So the cocktail this week, the Bymageddon, as we're calling it, it involves a couple of ingredients you might not think about necessarily always pairing together, but isn't that what we kind of all have to do when bye weeks come around? Is you're putting together lineups that you did not necessarily foresee yourself having to put together when the season started, but based on necessity or based on the fact that, hey, you just want to try something new, you're going to have to throw some disparate parts together this week. So let's take a look here real quick. I'm going to get started on the cocktail, and then we'll start talking about some players real quick. We're going to take a mixing glass, and I have my FSAN mixing glass here, and we are going to mix in what I've got here, 1.5 ounces of Highland Park 12 Scotch. That's Daddy's favorite Scotch for those of you who haven't been paying attention lately. We're going to mix in 1.5 ounces of that. We're going to mix in 0.75 ounces of Drambuie. If you're not familiar with Drambuie, it is it's a liqueur from Scotland, from the Isle of Skye. It's aged Scotch whiskey. It's also got some honey and some spices and things like that. But we're going to put 0.75 ounces of that into our mixing glass as well. We're also going to mix in 0.75 ounces of maraschino liqueur. So maraschino cherries, the thing that turns them into the candied cherries, the liqueur. We're going to add in 0.75 ounces of that as well. That's going to give us a little bit of a sweetness there. And we're also going to do a dash of, because Daddy likes bitters, we're going to put in a couple of dashes of bitters there into our mixing glass full of ice. And we are going to stir that. While I'm stirring that here, we're going to talk about our players that we're going to use for the week. At quarterback, we are going to go with Mr. Bo Nix. Bo Nix is 10th in DraftKings salary this week. He's only $6,000, for a salary there, but he's QB5 ECR on the week. We love ourselves some Bo Nix here right now. He was a little disappointing earlier in this season, but Dallas, his opponent this week, gives up the most points to quarterbacks. We've kind of been chasing Dallas a little bit this year in the DFS ranks, and for good reason here. Now, I don't think that Bo Nix, we're not chasing points from last week. I don't think Bo Nix rushes for 2 scores this week, but he's got an opportunity to get 1. He does have 3 rushing touchdowns total on the season there. Dallas has given up some rushing touchdowns at that quarterback position, and they give up a ton of passing yardage. Mr. Bo Nix has been coming on lately. We're going to roll with Bo Nix at 6,000. And then we're going to look at Cortland Sutton to pair with him from his own team at 6,200. Now, Mr. Sutton is 9th in DraftKings salary, but he is ranked as the wide receiver 6 from an ECR standpoint this week. Dallas, again, just like with the quarterbacks, gives up the most points to wide receivers. Stop me if you've heard me say that before in this segment. And last week, Cortland Sutton tied his season high for targets. He had 10 targets last week. He hasn't scored a touchdown in almost a month here since week 4. I think he's due. I am very comfortable playing Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton against the Dallas Cowboys this week. So then we're not going to play anybody back against them because I don't necessarily have a whole lot of faith in anybody against the Broncos defense. Now, if you want to play somebody in that Dallas offense, they've been a great point scorer as well. CeeDee Lamb's back. CeeDee Lamb looked good last week. If you want to play somebody, go for it. But I'm going to go cheap at the tight end position. For the second week in a row, we're going to play a tight end. And we're going to go with Colston Loveland of the Chicago Bears. I like him as a sleeper this week for 3,000, only 3,000 on DraftKings. Baltimore gives up the 9th most points to opposing tight ends. And Cole Kmet, his primary competition at his position there in Chicago, is banged up. And Loveland's been coming on since he missed week 4 with the injury. They had their bye week after that. But since then, the last 2 weeks, he's been coming on a little bit. He's seen more action. Baltimore just let Tyler freaking Higbee score a touchdown against them and go for 40 yards and have a decent day against them. If you've followed me for any length of time, you know Tyler Higbee is a guy that I don't even rank on principle when I'm ranking my tight ends. I don't care what his matchup looks like. I don't rank Tyler Higbee. And that dude scored against them last week. I'll roll with Colston Loveland at 3,000 at tight end, and that's going to allow me to pay up elsewhere. And we are going to pay up elsewhere because we're going to go with Bijan Robinson at 8,800 for one of our running backs, okay? If you've been following along and paying attention, Bijan Robinson has been a top 12 DraftKings play every single week this season. He's been the number 1 overall running back at points this season. Miami gives up the 3rd most points to running backs. They're terrible. I mentioned earlier in this program, I don't think that they're going to have to throw a whole hell of a lot. And if they don't have to throw, they're going to have to run. Well, Bijan Robinson's backup, Tyler Algier, is banged up. I expected Atlanta to crush it. I am comfortable going with Mr. Bijan Robinson. So now we have gone ahead and we've stirred that until that is chilled. I'm going to strain this into a rocks glass full of ice here, and I'm going to add 4 ounces of tonic water on top of that and garnish it with some cherries. And that's going to be our Bymageddon. And I'm going to drink that, and I'm going to feel really good about myself by the time that Sunday rolls around. While I'm straining and mixing this, Dan, Adam, what are your thoughts either on the guys that we are rolling with this week, Nix, Sutton, Loveland, and Bijan, or on anybody you like to add in around them or in place of them this season?
Well, Cole Kmet better be out for Loveland because he just doesn't play enough otherwise. But we'll wait and see how that's going to play out this week. I love the Bijan take, not because they're playing against Miami, but if you want to go with one of the top running backs, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, or Bijan Robinson, he's the cheapest one at 8,800. Now, Jonathan Taylor's playing against Tennessee. Taylor's going to go off this week. There's no doubt about it. But Bijan, with that matchup against Miami, could either match or surpass Jonathan Taylor and his, hat trick touchdowns that games that he's been having. Right. And you're going to get him for about $700 less. So I kind of wanted to make that point. Like if you're looking to pay up at a running back, it needs to be Bijan this week for that reason.
Yep.
Outside of that, I'm sticking with Jackson Dart. He's $5,500. Wanyél Robinson, we talked about a lot on the show, $5,200. These are good matchups with good usage, hot as of recent, in a game in which will likely be higher scoring because these two divisional teams go at each other constantly. Like, that's cheapola. Tight end, going to go back to the Colts. Tyler Warren is on friggin' fire, and he's only $5,500 right now playing against Tennessee Titans. That whole offense might just be Taylor and Warren. And then one other value I want to throw out here that people just aren't catching up on yet. DeAndre Swift's at $5,900 going up against Baltimore this week. I talked about it earlier. He's more efficient with Monangai being involved,
yes,
and more productive as a fantasy player than when he's a bell cow. It's the one player where it kind of works a little bit backwards that way, but it does work, and you're playing against Baltimore, who are 31st against running backs. Yeah, so those are some values that I kind of have thrown in here. I want Adam to kind of take over a little bit, see what he's got.
Before you jump in, DeAndre Swift take. I love it. I actually have him in several of my lineups with my core four that I just threw at people there. The DeAndre Swift take. Yeah, don't jump on that. Adam, what's your takes real quick here?
Yeah, another guy I'll throw out there, especially if you go the Loveland route, you probably wouldn't want to double up with Warren, but Pittman's a pretty good option at 5,600. Yes. He has a touchdown in all but 2 games this season, including his second highest yardage total against the Tennessee Titans, which also had a touchdown. Another option, a guy who I'll admit I didn't think he was going to recover his season, but boy has he. The hidden guy who was saved by Joe Flacco has been Chase Brown, who has averaged 7.5 yards per carry on the starts with Joe Flacco so far.
He's in the ball more than 9 times because I still hit the under on him despite him getting 7.5 yards per carry because he only got 9 touches.
It's been moving in the right direction. The snap count's coming back up since suddenly he's efficient again. Yeah. So he is one that, especially against the Jets, where that matchup is pretty awesome. It's like probably the first time they'll actually be favored. I like the setup for him.
All right, couple of notes here real quick. This cocktail, I love it. It's a little spirit forward. So if you need to play with the ratios a little bit to make it a little bit sweeter for your tastes or whatever else, you go right ahead and do that. But I would like to point out also that the common thread between Mr. Tyler Warren and Mr. Michael Pittman would be Danny Dimes, my guy.
Indiana Jones.
Playing like a champ.
Right. That's right.
I gotta get that in there, especially since you twisted the knife on my guy, Bryce Young. So.
You know what? I'll take that one for our boy Adam over here because he's loving life right now as a result of it. So
I'm great. I can be a bandwagon. I don't have shame.
Yeah, remember how much we were just afraid that Daniel Jones was going to do well this season? It's like, hell yeah, keep doing well, buddy.
My complaint was if he goes 9-8. I prefaced every single time. If he goes 9-8, I'm going to throw a tantrum.
If he wants to go 12-5, hell yeah, fire it up.
I'm all cool with that.
Right now, all roads look like it's going to lead through Indianapolis pretty soon. The way this keeps going, then it's legitimate too. This is not an unsustainable thing that's going on with the Indianapolis Colts. But that's going to wrap it up for today's show. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Make sure you download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. I'll be back tomorrow with Dr. Brian Scott to talk about the injury inquiries. And until then, take care.